apply at churches and look for work. And the more and more we did this, we were feeling like God was saying, I'm calling you into this ministry I've been telling you about, that I've been preparing you for doing home missions. And we fought that, and because it was a little scary. But my husband had applied at a church on the East Coast of the United States. When he had come back, we were praying about whether we were supposed to take this position. And one day I heard the Lord say to me, that would be like returning to Egypt. I'm like, is that you, God? I don't know, that doesn't sound right. But he wasn't calling the church Egypt. What he was calling Egypt for us was that which was comfortable for us, that which we had gotten used to being our provision. And he was saying, I wanted to do a new thing in your life. And so we were like, okay, God, so what do we do? Like, what's this? So we weren't sure if we were hearing right, so we were still praying. And the next Sunday at church, we went to church and our pastor was preaching. And that Sunday, I don't know, probably many of you in here are like me. You sit in the same section every week of church. Is anybody else like that? Yeah, that was us. Except for this week, for some reason, we sat in a different section, which I don't know why, but we did. And that day, our pastor was preaching, and in the middle of his sermon, he stopped, and he said, there's somebody here today. You're sitting actually in this section, the section we were actually sitting in. And he said, you're trying to do things the way you've always done them. But God says, no, that would be like returning to Egypt. And we looked at each other, we're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So that night, we go home, and my husband decided to watch a preacher on TV. And while the preacher was preaching, he stopped in the middle of his sermon, and he said, somebody's watching here tonight. And you're trying to do things the way you've always done them, but that would be like returning to Egypt. My husband gets up, runs into the bedroom, you're not going to believe what just happened. I'm like, oh, I love my life. So the next Wednesday, he goes to a local church to hear a preacher on a certain topic he wanted to hear, and he got the night wrong. And there was a special speaker. Do you know where I'm going with this? He stopped in the middle of his sermon, and he said, there's somebody here tonight. You're trying to do things the way you've always done them. And he says, you're dragging your heels. Peter, get out of the boat and walk. And so my husband comes home. We're like, okay, like we're in sin if we don't just we don't step out in this now. But God, like my husband said, he's a father and a husband. At that time we had only 3 children, but they were little, 8, 6, and 4. And he's like, God, I've got responsibilities here. How are we going to eat? I mean, show us how we're going to eat. So that Saturday he'd gone to a local food bank to help a friend get some food for a family in need. And while he was standing there talking to some men, all of a sudden he heard this big booming voice saying, God will provide. My husband's like, what on earth? What is that? He looks to turn, not knowing it was even for him. And the man's just like, go time, like looking straight in his eyes. And then the man just turned around and walked away and left. And so we get home and he tells me, and we say, okay, we give, God. But you provide, and then we'll step out. Because this is big, we've got 3 small children. So anyways, that Sunday, we're at church, and our pastor was preaching. And he said in the middle of his sermon, he said, don't we sometimes say, God, you provide, and then I'll step out. But no, God says, step out, and then I'll provide. And we looked at each other like, what? He used our exact words that we had been saying to him. So we said, okay, God, we give. You've given so many things and show us this is what you want us to do. But I said, God, I've been serving you like my whole life. I've been grown up in a Christian family. My faith is not there to believe for rent. Just yet. I'm not there yet. So can you please provide us? And I thought, I've got this one. He's not going to do this one. Provide us a place rent-free for the first 3 months. And I want you to tell me by this Sunday. Thinking, my God, over a barrel, there was no way he was going to do this. So my week went on, it was busy, and I'd forgotten what I'd prayed. And that weekend, my sister-in-law phoned. She lives in Huntsville, and she says to my husband, I'd like to talk to Dana. So she gets on the phone, Dana, I had a dream, and I woke up and I knew I had to phone you, and I want to offer you guys a place rent-free for a few months to live with us. Now, I forgot what I had prayed, and I was living in sunny Southern California, where there are no bugs in the spring. There's no 40 below weather. I mean, if you see a mosquito, you're like, what was that? That's so bizarre. So I just politely thanked her and said, oh, that's so nice, Dottie. I really appreciate it. And I got off the phone, and then the Lord dropped it. He reminded me what I prayed, and it was Sunday. So I looked at my husband and I said, I guess we're moving to Canada. I said, I guess we are. So off we went. We packed our 3 kids in our car. We put everything and most of our stuff in storage and headed off to Canada. And the Lord said, you take care of the people I put in front of you. You serve me and I will provide for you. So, this was a big stretch because now we were completely trusting God for what we're going to do. And I remember in that I think it was around the first month that we were doing this, we were in Huntsville. And I always like to say at the mall, because I'm a little stuck up about malls, because it's not a mall in Huntsville. If you've been to the Huntsville Mall, it's not a mall. It's a shopping center. My sister-in-law and I always have an argument about this. But my husband says I'm a mall snob from Southern California. So there was one of those little fairs they have in malls. And my kid said, oh, mommy, please, can we go on the Ferris wheel? I'm like, I don't know, kids, these things are expensive. We probably can't afford it, but let's stop and ask. So I got out of the car and I said to the men there, and I said, hey, how much does it cost to go on the Ferris wheel? And they said, well, actually, we're taking the fare down, but we haven't started taking the Ferris wheel apart, so why don't you and your kids just come on for free? And I couldn't believe it. You see, this wasn't a need. This was a want. Now, God has not given me all my wants, like that Jennifer was talking about, but this was something where God was starting to wake some stuff in my children's hearts to see that they could trust the Lord. And he heard the little cries of these little people. About a year later, we were moving into a house, and our kids said, we'd really like to have bunk beds. Can we have bunk beds? But I'm sure everybody here knows bunk beds are expensive. And I said, there's no way we can afford bunk beds, but if you want bunk beds, I want you to go and you pray, you ask Jesus for bunk beds. He might say no, he might say yes, but you don't know until you ask. So they started to pray. And about a week later, a lady came up to me at church and said, Dana, we're getting rid of 2 sets of bunk beds. Would you like them? Yes, I would like them. And it was just neat to see God doing this in my children's hearts as well as mine, because as I saw their hearts being fulfilled in those things, it was ministering to my heart. Plus, God was doing other things as well. So into this, not only into this, a few months into it, the Lord decided to put a new, fresh way of trusting him and decided to allow me to get pregnant. At a time I shouldn't have even been able to get pregnant, and I did. And of course, being an American, I did not have OHIP because I did not have landed status yet, so everything had to come out of pocket. And I remember the day that Benjamin was born, and we went down to the administration building to pay our bill, and I said, now I have $2,000 to pay, but I don't have the last $300. Is that okay? And she said, yes, if it had been the other way around, we would have had a problem, but this is good. So again, then God provided the rest, and the bill was paid not long later. Around 3 years into this journey, my mom contacted me, and we were talking one day, and she said, because they had not supported us doing it this way, they wanted us to do it the way that we had originally asked God to, for him to provide and step out. Understandably, I'm sure everybody here, if your children and your grandchildren were stepping out in something like this, you'd be nervous. And so she wanted us to serve the Lord, but was afraid financially for us. And so I remember her saying to me, Dana, I don't think everyone is called to do it this way, but I truly believe you guys are, because I've seen God provide for you again and again and again. And I know he's not a respecter of persons, so if he provides for you, he's going to provide for me and Dad. And so it was such an encouragement. Around 4 years ago, we were given our notice for the house we were living in here in North Bay, and we had really good rent. And so we were concerned. We said, God, what are we going to do? How are we going to find a place? Because rent can be very expensive, and when you live by faith, that's an important thing. So I was praying, and I heard the Lord to say, I want you to go to California and help your parents move. They were moving from California to Atlanta to be with my brother, who was a children's pastor out there, and to have the help because my dad has a disease that they needed help with. So I said, and now you have to understand, we had no vehicle. So we had been out of the van for around 3 years because our van had died, and we just thought the Lord wanted us to learn to trust him by taking the bus, walking. I said to my kids, we're making you strong Canadians. And so I said to Rory, I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like we're supposed to go to California. I just don't know how. And he said, okay, well, let's pray. Let's see what God does. So 2 months later, we paid $10,000 cash for our van, and we had the money to get down to California. We did not have the money to get back, however. So we were going in faith, knowing that this is what he wanted us to do. But by the time it was time to leave, we had the money to come back. And even along the way, people that we stopped to see, without even telling them our whole story, God was just telling them, bless them, bless them. And we even ended up with a little extra. At the end, God was so faithful to take care of us. My youngest was 5 at the time, had never met my parents. So the kids got to serve. They got to we all got to bless my parents, get everything packed and cleaned, and they learned to serve sacrificially. My 2 middle kids, my daughter who's here today, and our other son, middle son, they got on their hands and knees and scrubbed their floor with bleach and got it all ready for them and just served sacrificially. And it was just neat for them to get to learn that. So over the 10 years, he's had us teach, to mentor, including with marriages, being able to speak into marriages. I've written a book called Once Upon a Fairy Tale. It's a book about marriage for women. There's a couple of ladies in here who've read it. We lead worship, which I love to do. It's one of my favorite things. We write our own original music, which we've just finished recording our first CD, and are now just needing to do the producing for it, trusting God for the ability to do that. But what God has taught us these last 10 years is that the key to this is intimacy. And when we've come to him trying to get answers, he said, you keep trying to come for answers, but I want you to come for intimacy. And in the intimacy with me, you will get the answers. And that contentment comes from intimacy. So spending time with him at his feet, in his word, in worship, listening to him, a willingness to obey, no matter the cost, no matter what people say, because we've had some people are amazed sometimes we tell them some of the things people have said to us over the years, but we have to obey him no matter what. And there was even one point where Rory decided, we sometimes had times where we wanted to give up because it was hard, and he was getting ready to go apply at a church in North Bay for a youth pastoring job, and while he was cleaning out our van, a commercial came on the radio, and it said, do you want to go back to Egypt? He's like, I'm not applying anymore. So he was saying, like, this is not what I've called you to do. It's been a journey, and sometimes if we are not in a place of intimacy, then we won't hear his answers well, and we will fight and fight, swinging our fists in the air instead of raising our hands in praise and worship, no matter what comes our way. You know, I can feel his peace just flood my soul when I soak in worship music and let the presence of the Lord wash over me. It causes that stress to roll off. Because I can admit to you that I do still struggle with anxiety. I often have called myself an Israelite. As I've said, I've seen God provide in miraculous ways again and again, and yet a new situation comes and I start to go, oh, what am I going to do? And that's what the Israelites did, right? I saw that God provided. Sometimes we go, what were those Israelites thinking? Why were they not just trusting? I mean, they've seen God do amazing things. I'm seeing it right here, but we saw the end result. They couldn't see the end result. But even when we can't see the end result, we still have to rest. So we're on our next step of our stage of a journey of faith as we're about to leave next Friday to go down to Atlanta to help my parents, as my dad has been put on hospice from a disease that is currently killing him. They decided to stay in Atlanta when my brother moved to Colorado 2 years ago because the experts for my dad's disease, it's a rare disease, are in Atlanta. And it's very difficult when you get a new doctor and they don't know they don't know what we're talking about. So I'm so thankful that God took them there. They didn't know his diagnosis when they moved there. So they have no family near them. And with my mom's 76 and taking care of him in a difficult stage of life. So as homeschoolers, we can take our school with us and we can go and serve my parents. And we're again trusting God for all of our needs to do this. And he has been so good to bring us in what we've been needing to get down there, and are praying all will come in that we need for the entire trip. We even told our kids this week, we said, hey, we're going to be driving by Washington, D.C. That's a great homeschooling stop. So learning about it, they can get even that hands-on little blessings that come even in the midst of that obedience. And I continue to say, even though I've had anxiety as this come, there's so much in this trip that has, well, we have a dog that we had to find a place. Thankfully, we found her a place this week. And the finances and our vehicle and my dad's health, just to go down and to experience that, I just keep saying, Lord, I'm not sure if I'm ready, but he's ready. And that's what's amazing, is I can trust him and continue to put my trust in him as I wait one step at a time, one foot in front of another. See, each of us, each of you in here are no different from me. We're each on a faith journey. It's just that ours look different. We have to trust God with whatever he has put before us. You know, what has God called you to walk in faith with? What is he asking you to do that maybe you are afraid or unsure if you can step out and obey him with? Maybe it's with a failing or struggling marriage, and he has called you to stay and love your husband even when it feels impossible. Or maybe it is asking you to give up an offense of something that was clearly done against you. You feel you have the right to be hurt or angry and hold back forgiveness. But the Lord says, give it to me, let go, and trust me. Or maybe he wants you to step out in a new venture, ministry, or business that feels too big for what you are comfortable with. Or could it be trusting him for finances that seem lost in cyberspace somewhere? Maybe he's asked you to be an intercessor for those in your life who don't know him, but you don't feel you know how to pray, or you feel you can't stay focused long enough, so how and obey. But I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that he is so trustworthy, and you can rest in him. As a mom of 4 and 2 of my boys being beautifully autistic, I can tell you that getting into the secret place is key. He is waiting. He wants to meet with you. He wants to teach you to grow your relationship with him and take you deeper into a place of faith, trust, and rest, because you are so loved.